On this video we're continuing with Czech game editions with Under Falling Skies, Space Invaders in a solo game. Can it work? Let's find out. Hey folks, thanks for joining me on another Broken Meeple video. I've now resorted to using autofocus on the camera, so hopefully we won't have any more blurred faces of me, even though for most people that's probably a blessing. In Under Falling Skies, which is a solo-only game, you're defending your base from an alien attack. You have to shoot down enemy ships while also researching a way to defeat the alien threat. To do so, you are going to need to use various rooms inside your base, some to generate power, some to do the research itself, and some to man the guns in order to shoot down the ships. But the rooms you begin with are not the best ever, and so you have an excavator which can progress down the base in order to reveal better rooms, more efficient rooms, and give you a better chance of success. It's essentially Space Invaders the game, and yes, there's only one cartoon character who always makes me laugh when it comes to Space Invaders.
People of Earth, I am Lur of the planet Nintendo 64.
You'll have 5 dice which you use to perform your actions in the base. After rolling all 5 dice, you will allocate a die to each column in your base, either ahead of the excavator to dig further, or in specific rooms in order to perform the various actions. Some rooms generate power for the base, some rooms generate the research you need to win, and some rooms man the guns so you can shoot down enemy ships as they progress. But there's a catch. The value of the die not only influences the strength of the room, but it also influences the movement value of the ship in that column for the round. So the higher the value, the faster the ship moves. The game acts as a continuous puzzle where you will need to use your dice effectively and efficiently, but you are against the clock, because as with all of these games, there's more ways to lose than there are to win. Should your base sustain too much damage, you'll lose the game, but also if the mothership gets too close to your base, well, what do you think happens?
Well, actually, that was just footage from the movie Independence Day, but the real laser would be a lot like that, yeah.
But hopefully you'll be able to perform enough research to get your green counter to the top of the track, at which point you'll win immediately. But all I've described is the starter set. If you want to go one step further, you can get into the main full game, where not only do you have a couple of extra bases to work with, but you can also build robots, which are kind of things that occupy rooms for a period of time, but the die value ticks down one by one each round, and so they get progressively weaker until you build another robot. And if you really want to go the extra mile on top of that even, then there's even a small campaign setting in the game, which unlocks little additional modules that allow you to add to the variety of the game in question, as well as introduce little extra rules here and there. They essentially teach you the game modules as you go through it. A good light solo game should be quick, and thankfully Under Falling Skies is a really quick game. Your first learning game will probably take you at most 45 minutes, but then after a couple of games you'll be easily resolving these in 20 to 30 minutes per play. Of course it's down to how long you want to spend thinking about what dice you use, but that's you, and at least you're engaged with the game that way. But this really isn't a long affair. Learning the rules is pretty quick, and you're stuck in, you're instantly rolling dice, making decisions, and getting on with it. If you do really badly, then yes, the aliens could wipe you out in even less time, but even if you go the full mile and get to like the last part of your base that's still standing, you're still probably only looking at a 30-minute game. This is an ideal length for a solo experience while still being pretty thinky at the same time. Under Falling Skies is a pretty simple game overall, with a small rulebook that clearly explains what you're doing. It gives you a start with the basic game, and then after that you're able to jump into the full game, which pretty much adds like 1 or 2 tiny rules, and that's about it. But the rulebook itself is clear, everything's pretty easy to follow, there's no overload of complex iconography, and most iconography on the board you can pretty much figure out what it means anyway. It's very clear, very straightforward. I dare say somebody who's never really seen games before should be able to pick this up without too much trouble. And not to sound like a broken record, but I don't care if there's a good resource around, I'm going to tell you about it, then you can simply go watch Paul Grogan's official video commission by CGE, where they teach you to do the rules in pretty speedy time. Not that you have a lot of rules to learn, but if you prefer to watch a video to do it, then by all means check it out. And of course, as with all dice games, you're worried about how high the luck value is going to be in this, and whether it's just like, oh, roll dice and see what happens. Well, this is a very clever system. You're using 2 dice, but there's really a lot of mitigation there, and you're the one making the choices as to how much you want to mitigate it. You have two opportunities to re-roll the dice and you have full disclosure as to which column they go in. It's not that a column restricts you with a high value or a low value, it's your decision. And if you take a white die, then you have to re-roll all the other dice, but it's up to you when you take the white die. Do you not like any of the numbers you rolled, in which case use a white die first and get a re-roll. But if you like what you've rolled, then don't use a white die for as long as possible. At the end of the day, yes, there's dice, there's going to be a little bit of luck in there, but not as much as you might think, and believe me, I've played a lot of dice games, and I've seen far more swings of luck in those. The game on mid to later difficulties is not the easiest thing in the world to succeed at, but I never had a situation where I lost a game and then immediately blamed it on the dice. No, I knew when I made mistakes or wasn't as efficient as I could be, and where I could have done things differently. Yes, the dice might hose you if you're hoping to get that 6 at the one time you have one die. Well, if you left yourself in that situation, then what do you expect? But overall, your choices mean more than what the dice say. Add to that the robots, which you place in different rooms as you see fit, and they just tick down over time, you've got some pretty good mitigation when you think about it. Seriously, build these things. These things have been a lifesaver more often than not. In fact, in the last game I played, I essentially had Johnny 5 sitting in the gun turrets, mowing down ships left, right and centre. He was an absolute godsend to the team. Well, once we sorted out some of his initial programming faults.
Bad humans!
It can be a nightmare to balance all the aspects you've got to think about, from shooting down ships to doing the research to having enough power to do so, and of course excavating your base, because without those later rooms you can't even finish the game. But when it does come to fruition, when your plans succeed, or when you get a round where you kill 4 or 5 ships on the same turn, it's so satisfying. But you can still create some weird combos ahead of time. For example, the mothership progresses down slowly, but if a little tiny fighter ship lands on a mothership move space, the mothership comes down further. But there's a negative effect on the side of the board which triggers if the mothership moves naturally on top of it. Not when a fighter ship moves it though. So there may be some negative effect you don't want to happen, so you deliberately position a fighter ship so that it lands on the mothership space, sends it down a notch, and therefore ignores the negative effect that you don't want to happen. Yes, it's bringing you closer to an ultimate fail, but not having that negative effect might just save your bacon. However, the gameplay can feel a little linear in terms of the overall goal though. It's not a big deal, but your strategy doesn't really change from game to game. You need the research to win. Well, of course you need to get research, and you can't even get the later parts of the research track without the excavated rooms. So every game will progress in kind of a similar manner every single time.
Doing precisely what we've done 18 times before is exactly the last thing they'll expect us to do this time.
So chances are you'll send your excavator down the base as fast as you can in order to get the better, more efficient rooms, while also balancing the fact that you don't want the fighter ships to mow you down before you get there. But no game really differs from that. It's not like in the next game you'll be able to go, well, you know what, I'm not going to bother excavating much, I'll just hang around at these rooms here. Well, no, you physically can't do the research on certain combinations of that, and the rooms are far too inefficient for you to have an effective defense. So it does mean that each game is going to feel a little bit similar from time to time. It's more the puzzle of figuring out how to get from A to B, as opposed to having A and then deciding whether you want to go to B, C, D or E. In terms of the components, they're adequate. Nothing stands out here as being particularly stellar. The tiles are decent quality, there's nothing wrong with the artwork, and I do like the little plastic translucent ships. But the dice are pretty generic and basic, and that's kind of about it really. There's nothing bad per se. It's not like I picked up a component and went eh, or had something break off in my hand, but it's not like I'm gonna show off this game and go, ooh, look at all the fancy things I've got in this one. It's like, nah, it's pretty standard. Now in terms of immersion, the dice mechanic doesn't have much of a thematic connection by itself, but you cannot help but play this game without quoting just about every Space Invaders or Independence Day reference you can.
Increase speed, drop down, and reverse direction!
Certainly, at least on a visual level, it mimics the computer game at least pretty perfectly, with the whole mothership coming down slowly and the ships slowly progressing down as you shoot upwards at them. Although you don't do anything quite too crazy here like shooting upwards through your own shield. Even the campaign element in the game is not particularly that immersive either. It's a basic scenario by scenario thing where you go through and it teaches you the different extras you can add to your game of Underfolding Skies piece by piece. The best comparison is is the Rise of Fenris expansion that came out for Scythe a while ago. That one had a bunch of modules that you could basically chop and cannibalize to your heart's content if you really wanted to, but alternatively you could play through a story-based campaign, which again in itself was not particularly immersive, but it was a good way to basically teach you, right, this is how this module works, this is how this module works. This campaign does the exact same thing, just a bit simpler and on a smaller scale. And the campaign, without going into spoilers, isn't just a predetermined sequence and then you're done. You do get some branching choices generated semi-randomly by what decisions you make, which can lead to some different combinations for gameplay, meaning you can repeat the campaign multiple times and go at it from a different perspective if you really want. Although, pretty much what I did was that I simply played through the campaign and then thought, that was pretty neat, but now I just want to chop and change and do what I like. That's entirely your prerogative, but at least you haven't got to go, well, I've done the campaign once and now I'm done. But is that a problem? I mean, you've got a lot of content in the box before you even touch the campaign stuff. You've got free bases, you've got the multiple difficulty levels, you've got the robots, and you've got all that in different combinations of how you can use them before you even decide, oh, you know what, let's tap into that campaign element. And then once you've gone through that, which is at least another 4 games, then you've got so much extra stuff and extra bases and extra various bits, like I say, I'm not going to go into spoilers here, that you can use in your game. You will not be able to run out of the variety in this game before far too long in the future. And for a game that's less than £30, I'd say that's a result. Under Falling Skies has really been getting a lot of good buzz lately, and I've got to agree with people who do find this really good. It is a solid dice game, it's a solid solo game. So many solo games lately are all these massive, grandiose, like, campaign setting games, and whereas, I mean, I've got Tainted Grail on the other table, that's all well and good. Nowadays, I wouldn't mind just the occasional little nice small box solo game that doesn't take ages to learn, doesn't take ages to set up and play. It's just something that I can get done nice and quick and still test the brain cells. Under Falling Skies does that pretty much perfectly. It's just nice, clever, and thinky. You've got a lot of variety in the box, and that's before you tap into the campaign elements, and you will last you a good while, doesn't cost the ends of the earth, and is a pretty simple game to get into. It's not the best looker on the table, despite the components being fine, and I do wish maybe there was a little bit of a less linear path to victory in terms of how you actually play the game, but these fairly small nitpicks aside, it's a solid solo game and probably one of the best solo games that there is out for players, and certainly one of the best games that came out in 2020. In fact, you've only got to look at my top 10 list of 2020 to find that out. Blimey, you're probably spoiling half my list at this rate with the reviews I'm doing. Under Falling Skies doesn't quite meet the legendary status, but it's still a brilliant game and definitely deserves a solid 9 out of 10 with a seal of distinction. For complexity rating, I would go as low as 1 cog. It really isn't that difficult to learn or play the game, and I expect this to appeal to solo gamers who are both familiar with gaming in general, but even those who are completely new to the hobby. Honestly, if you're a solo gamer and you have not tried this, then how can you call yourself a solo gamer? Okay, you might be looking for something a bit more grandiose and epic, you know, big solo game, but a lot of people just want a nice, quick and easy one that they can break out, 30 minutes, done and dusted, and still test the brain cells and keep them entertained. Under Falling Skies will do that just fine. So thanks to you for watching, and thank you to my loyal Patreons who without their help this channel would not even exist. If I've earned your subscription, please don't forget to click the avatar in the center of the screen to register and hit the bell for future notifications. Of course, you can also check out zatu.co.uk where you can get 5% discount off your entire basket of games by using my code down in the description. Until next time, you can check out a recent upload or a video suggested by me. Until next time, take care, stay safe, and remember, it's only a game.